Welcome to Northwest Arkansas Investing Podcast. We have a great guest here today, Mayor Doug Sprouse of Springdale. Thank you for being with us, Doug. We really appreciate your time. We value your time. We just kind of wanted to get in here. So we wanted to jump right in. You've been the mayor since 2008, is that correct?
Yeah, I was elected in 2008, took office in January of 2009.
Okay.
Right.
And how'd that come about? Were you like, hey, let's run for mayor?
Hey, I was 51 years old when I was actually at a Sunday school fellowship, and the discussion started about Mayor Van Hoos not seeking re-election, and somebody said something stupid at a party and said, you know what? I think you ought to run for mayor. And everybody kind of laughs, and I laugh it off. But I was currently serving on the school board at the time. I'd been on the school board for almost 10 years and really enjoyed that service. And so, sometimes somebody plants a seed, and God won't let you let it go.
Yeah.
And I started talking with my wife, Sandy, and my kids because I knew if I jumped into this, it would affect them probably more than anybody. My kids, they were all grown and out of the house, but they're, they'll hear all the stuff and all that and have to deal with that. And I wanted to be sure they were okay with it. Of course, they were all very supportive. And then I started talking with Chamber of Commerce and with people in the community. I certainly went and talked. I met with Jerry Van Hoos, and he encouraged me and I, talked with my pastor, just all kinds of things. I took a few months.
Yeah.
And then by May of 2008, because this was in late 2007.
Right.
And in May of 2008, I announced, and then, of course, there were 6 of us in the race.
Right.
Being an open seat. And I won it then in a runoff.
Wow.
Mike Overton, who's still on our council. He
Yeah.
was a council member at the time, and I were in a runoff, and then I won it and took office in January of 2009.
Wow, what an interesting time to get into politics too. That
Yeah.
07, 08, 09.
Yeah, it was tough. It was tough then. I can remember. Well, I'll get into that in a minute, but I remember one of the first things as a mayor, and it was during the ice storm, and I'm happy to talk about that too. That happened about 3 weeks after I took office, and so hey, welcome to mayor.
Welcome.
Yeah. But we had a new mayor in Fayetteville too. I can remember Lionel and I sitting with a new county judge, Mayor Edwards down in Washington County, and I can remember us sitting across the table from each other with all this stuff going at the EOC down in at Washington County, and all looking at each other like, what in the world?
What did we just get into?
Doing? Yeah. But I through that, honestly, that was a tough time. The economy was
Tough.
in the tank anyway.
Yeah.
Really, as in the tank as it gets in Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah.
And we, I can remember I'd been to an event in Bentonville, and Wyman Morgan, my chief of staff wasn't really his title. He was director of financial services for Springdale. But he was my right hand at the time, and we were coming back. I was driving. Wyman was in the passenger seat, and he got our sales tax numbers in for the month.
Yep.
And and I about ran off the road. I mean, and I didn't know enough to be scared. But when Wyman got that message and got off his phone and called our financial director in Springdale and said, are we going to be okay on our bond payment this month? That I knew enough to know that was something to be worried about. It was like for that month it was like $600,000.
Oh,
and now we just had our record month this last reporting at we were up almost 10%, 9.6% over last February, and it was $2.3 million. So big difference.
Wow. Big difference.
Big difference.
Crazy.
And
big perspective shift.
But things were really, really tight, and so that was a heck of a time to come in, and then of course the ice storm really
what was
added to that.
Trail us off just a little bit. I know we're getting off the real estate side of things.
I love it, yeah.
But I mean, the ice affected a lot of real estate. So what was that like, jumping into office and immediately getting hit with an ice storm?
I'll tell you, in a lot of ways, as I look back on it, it as bad as it was and as much damage as was done, for me and for the years ahead of me as mayor, it was I think it was probably one of the best things that could have happened to me. I mean,
elaborate on that.
In my leadership.
Yeah.
And because, look, I had been a small business owner. We had a small business in Springdale for 35 years, Sprouse Upholstery, very successful as upholstery shops go. But, it you know, it supported my family. It raised my kids. You know, I'll never, I'm proud of that background as a small business owner. But I remember weeks when I didn't know if somebody was going to walk through the door so I could make payroll and not have to send somebody home. But from that background into being thrown into that and having to realize, I realized how many professionals surrounded me. Our fire chief, our police chief, our public works director, that even though they'd not been through that before either. But they were seasoned. They knew their roles, and they knew it wasn't all on me. It wasn't decisions that I had to make. I could lean on those professionals that surrounded me, and that really set the stage for me to I think to have more success. In the subsequent years because I just I can remember there were a few days there. I can remember getting a call from my fire chief. We were about 2 weeks in, and so a lot of Springdale was still out of electricity, and still out of power. And our fire chief at the time, Dwayne Atha, he called me one morning and he said, we didn't text. We had this was, it takes a long time to text on a flip phone. But he called me that morning and he said, Mayor, I want to alert you to something. We had about 50 people taken to the emergency room last night for carbon monoxide poisoning.
Really?
Yeah. And I said, what happened? And he said, well, we had a lot of people, they were trying to heat their homes with charcoal, with gas stoves.
Wow.
And he said, thankfully, thank God nobody lost their life. There was some sick, and it was a scare though. So we had to we mobilized everybody the next day. Again, we didn't have any kind of mass notification at the time, and so we got together, and it was in areas of the city where it was largely maybe a largely Hispanic area or a large Marshallese population there. And we gathered the resources we could, the resources we could to help us translate. And Marshallese is still hard to translate.
Right.
Spanish we can hit
figure that out.
Google
Translate.
But back then, I mean, it was a real scare. We created flyers, and our police department, fire department, other city staff, we went out and walked door to door, handing out these flyers, trying to get people to understand. We've got places. We had a warming shelter at the senior center. We had places for them to go. But getting that word out was just tough.
Please don't heat your house with charcoal or
please
something.
Don't. And from Central America or much further south or from the Marshall Islands. We had people probably that never had to heat their home anytime. And so they didn't know, but that was just a real learning experience. But through that experience, I mean, I can remember on a Saturday afternoon. I mean, I'm gonna be cut myself and bleed on you a little here. Totally open.
That's fine.
But I mean, it was a Saturday afternoon. I remember it like it was yesterday. And Sandy had gone out to do something, and so I was home alone, and I just got alone with God, and I said, God, what have you put me in? What am I going to do? I get emotional now thinking about it. But hey, it all worked. It all worked out, and I think that experience helped me.
That really laid the foundation there for your next. I mean, you're still in office. I mean, that's incredible. It's incredible.
Went from running against 6 to running unopposed, and just this last year. So I mean,
speaks a lot.
Talk about adversity. Like you're going in with all this adversity. Running against 6 people. You have a runoff, and then you get thrown into this ice storm, and you're really like you said, you're going through this adversity like right when you're coming in. So almost all downhill.
Felt like you're in the valley.
And the budget implications of that. I've already, Tony, it was really tight in Springdale right then. We just not long before I became mayor, we'd lost Sam's Club. Sam's Club had relocated to Fayetteville. That was about $1 million a year hit. And with our budget at the time, that was a huge hit. It'd be a huge hit today.
Right.
But we were just struggling. On top of that, it was kind of like the perfect storm because another issue that had happened legislatively, not to get too far into the weeds, and y'all shut me up.
No, you're doing great. You're doing great.
There was a legislation passed called the Streamlined Sales Tax, and what that did, it changed the taxing location where you collect, because sales tax is the bread and butter of a city.
Yeah.
And it changed where those taxes are generated from point of sale to point of delivery.
Okay.
In other words, and I was in the upholstery business, so we delivered furniture all over Northwest Arkansas. But we had to start tracking where that furniture was delivered because then that city got the sales tax rather than Springdale getting it all because Sprouse Upholstery is located in Springdale. And I didn't really think it was fair. I still don't really think it's fair, but we've adjusted.
Yeah.
But that was a huge deal for Springdale because when you think about even today, not as much as it was then, but even today, delivery services, types of retail and businesses that typically would deliver a lot outside the city. The service industry, building supply. We had at the time. Of course, we had Lowe's. Everybody does, but National Lumber Supply. I mean, they everywhere. Anytime a national lumber truck delivered building supplies now to a home site and Grab-It. Well, Grab-It got the sales tax.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was a huge hit for us, and that hit the same time Sam's left Springdale.
Wow.
So we were. It was really difficult, and then the building slowdown that was happening anyway, and not to mention other business and how tough it was. And you guys remember that.
Oh my gosh.
But it was just a really tough time, and but hey, it makes you appreciate so much more where we're at now, and not everybody realizes that. Not everybody lived here then. That the way we're growing with people from all over the country coming here.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people will remember that, but it sure helped me prepare for how to appreciate the better times,
right?
But also how to know that. When you take a big hit, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. I think that leads
that.
us really well into the next part, which is why in the last 5 years it feels like Springdale's really come up. I guess just from a not really looking into it all the time, kind of just local perspective.
Right.
It's a place that we talked a little bit before we hit the start button. My wife wants to go to downtown Springdale all the time. Yeah. She loves it there. I mean, Brandon.
May her tribe increase.
Yeah, exactly. Brandon and I played high school ball for Harbor, kind of on Tawny Town, called like Tawny Town Harbor area, whatever. Right. But in the last 5 years, there's been almost like a change in the atmosphere. It feels like.
I agree.
Would you concur with that?
Absolutely.
And then, I guess to follow up on that is why.
Let me let me delve into that a little bit. When I grew up in Springdale, right?
Yeah.
So in the '60s and '70s, when I was in school, downtown was where everything was. It was a long haul to go to Bentonville.
Yeah.
It was even a fairly long haul. It was a big deal to go to Fayetteville, even though we shopped there a lot. That was kind of the retail center of Northwest Arkansas at the time.
Yeah.
But downtown Springdale was very vibrant. That's where we bought. That's where Mom bought my Cub Scout uniform. That's where all those things. That's where you go to Western Auto or Otasco and buy your bicycle.
Yeah.
And places to eat down there.
Yeah.
And a movie house, the Apollo.
Yeah.
And so. That's just where life was kind of centered until, as in a lot of downtowns, things moved out, things went west, and then through the late '70s and through the '80s, we had banks and law offices down there, and other than that, there wasn't a whole lot. We had a few stalwart clothing stores that wrote it out. Ryan's was successful down there for years. Spring Street Grill was a restaurant that fought through all that and succeeded. But other than that, it was just really tough down there. And so through that time, through the 80s and 90s, as Sandy and I were raising our young family, and you know, you can look back and I remember a lot of very well-intentioned efforts to bring downtown back and bring more businesses downtown, but it just wasn't happening.
Wasn't sticking.
It just wasn't.
Yeah.
And everybody tried hard, and then finally, I think it got to the point that people just wrote downtown off. They said it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And then something really interesting happened right after I became mayor. And it's called the Northwest Arkansas Razorback Greenway. And I can remember going to early meetings in the Greenway planning with Patsy Christie, our longtime planning director, who is about to retire effective March 31st. And you talk about leaving a hole. I mean, but she deserves any accolades she can get.
Right.
For that long tenure and all she's done to help shape Springdale. But we've got, you know, we went to early meetings and we were all adamant that the Greenway needs to run through downtown Springdale and follow Spring Creek and run through downtown Springdale. And that's what ended up happening, of course.
Yeah.
But then we had a real choice to make. And I can remember talking to groups and saying, look, we can be the ugly spot on this trail that everybody's going to be coming, but whatever we do, they're coming.
Yeah.
And they're going to go right through downtown. And I think more than anything else, there are a lot of catalytic projects that have happened.
Right.
But I think what's really started it off was the realization that Greenway, that major project, was going to run right through our downtown.
Yeah.
And and what are we going to do with that? How are we going to make the best out of that? Then other things happened. Turnbow Park was developed as we opened up that section of Spring Creek with a lot of help. And I know you want to talk about probably community partners, and you know Tyson's been huge. The Walton family's been huge, and a lot of smaller groups too that have poured not only money but also effort and of all kinds into our downtown. And you know, then when Tyson, another big shoe to drop was when Tyson decided to save the old Jeff Brown hatchery building. I mean, that thing that we had the big red X on it where the fire department wasn't going to go in if it caught fire. And
That's hilarious.
but Tyson, I remember those meetings and talking with them, and Tyson stepped up, and they spent probably a lot more on that than anybody should spend on an old building. But they wanted to do it. Johnny was very supportive of this. Johnny said, I'll never forget after the ribbon cutting and that office building opened, Johnny just said, well, Mayor, I hope it helps. Well, I do too, Johnny.
It wasn't about the money.
And it did. It certainly did. But that put people down there. That put people down there, which is the secret. And now what we're seeing is obviously the growth with Luther George Park and all that cool development down there and all the multifamily that's going in. We're going to have people in downtown Springdale now. And already do. And you can go down there any night of the week, and it's busy. It's bustling. It is exciting to be down there. And when I hear what you told me before this about your wife, you know, and where y'all like to go down there, that's music to my ears. Because that's and I find that when I go down there, when Sandy and I go down and go out to eat, and we try to eat a lot in downtown Springdale when we eat out, and to support those businesses. And when we're down there, we'll be in the Odd Soul, and there'll be a couple there that we're just happen to be sitting near, and we find out they're from Bentonville or Rogers or Fayetteville or out in the county somewhere, and they drive in to go. And 9 times out of 10, they're younger than me, and that's okay. In fact, that's really good.
That's fine.
but something they always talk about that I never take for granted. They talk about the authenticity. They talk about the grit. They talk about it's real, and I love that, man.
You use that word grit.
Yeah.
It's the same word I use it to describe downtown Rogers. Like that I've said I can't think of a word for downtown Rogers, but like grit sounds all right. It's the same thing for Springdale. It feels very authentic. Then I'm not going to say other downtowns don't. But it feels so authentic. It's like somebody's like it was more than the money. Like this was time, energy, effort put into this.
Right.
It's cool. It's cool to see though, because I think growing up, my parents always talked about how when Northwest Arkansas was kind of at its infancy, it was Springdale and it was Fayetteville, and that was really it. I mean, everything else wasn't really built, and so it's cool to kind of see the revitalization starting to really happen. And I think we'll get into this as well, but I think the more densely populated we can get that area with apartments and stuff, which is what is happening, and there's some amazing anchors down there with the restaurants and. I saw Onyx sign just go up.
My wife is pumped.
That is huge because that's an anchor as well. I mean, when you start to have those businesses that buy into kind of the vision and what you want to do, then I mean, there's unlimited opportunity.
Would you say we're seeing? So, I asked you the question earlier, like, why is it happening? We're seeing, like, it was planned a long time ago for this to happen. And so we're seeing it like come into realization now finally, and that's really cool. It's something I love having people like yourself on because you get insight that I didn't know like this whole thought process of like let's make downtown Springdale happen again. Like started when that Greenway thought happened. That's super super cool. Let's dig into a little bit on. We kind of talked about like why it's happening. Oh, also, have you tried the French restaurant downtown?
Oh yeah.
That was really good.
It's really good.
My wife, we love that place. We're like, we gotta come back.
It's not somewhere I'm going to go every week.
Right. Exactly. It's
but it's really good, and it's an experience for that you don't get around here.
That's why we love it.
Before we move on to something else about like, okay, the Greenway was key. What about opportunity zones? How do you think that's something like that?
That's a good catch. Thanks for bringing that up because we pushed hard for that. And I've got to give credit to Perry Webb, our former chamber president, and Lance Eads, who's a former state senator who actually worked for the chamber. And President Trump signed that tax bill in 2017, and part of it was something called opportunity zones. And Perry was the first one that I heard from that picked up on that and realized what that could be. And what was going to happen was each state was allotted so many, and based on population, but it was up to the governor to decide how those would be allotted throughout the state. And Springdale got 4. And they're all contiguous. We got as many as any other city in the state.
That's pretty good.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And they're all for us. They're all contiguous. They're all our entire downtown is included in an opportunity zone. And much of East Springdale. And we've seen what that's done, and it incentivized also more local investment too, which is cool. People like you guys that grew up in Springdale and love Springdale and want to support Springdale. We got opportunity zone funds that are Springdale folks, and I mean we'll welcome any of them. And that's certainly not exclusive to Springdale investment, but it does give a vehicle. It did give a vehicle for that to happen. I hope they get extended. I ask that question every time I go to D.C. I'll go again next week. I'll ask again next week, just to make sure. I think it's a nonpartisan issue. I think or a bipartisan issue is a better way to say it, because I think everybody realizes it's good. It wasn't it could have done more if more people had known about it, and as the time got extended and those opportunities got extended, I look for that to happen again. Now I don't know if they'll have the same, if there will be an opportunity to open up more zones, or hopefully the ones we've got we get to keep. I don't know how that'll all work, but I do know there's bipartisan support to to extend that.
You brought up a great point, which is not a lot of people knew about like what is this? What is even an opportunity?
And some like me knew and didn't understand.
Yeah. It's a word that was thrown around in the investor sphere, investing community. Like we primarily represent investors, and I'm sure I had one investor mention to me, I'm like, I got to figure out what this means. Like, what does this even mean? You go do your research and stuff. But that is a really good point. Is like, I think if more people knew, it might have been even more effective.
We can touch on opportunity zone. If you don't know what opportunity zone is, you hold a development or property in an opportunity zone, and you don't have to pay capital gains tax if you're holding that for 10 years. So really, it really makes it incentivizing for developers to come in. If you're not having to pay capital gains, that's a huge incentive for you to invest. And especially if you're selling a business, you sell another property, you could roll that into an opportunity zone fund, and you not need a 1031. So huge tax advantage for investors.
Thanks for remembering our audience. You do a great job.
Yeah, that's huge.
I was working with Omar on Omar Kasim on the 200 unit development right across from Luther George Park, and that is in the opportunity zone, and which makes it so attractive for investors.
Super attractive.
Not having to pay that.
I'm excited about that.
Speaking on that topic, over the last 5-10 years, what does the planning red tape look like as we press forward and things get taller and bigger and more complex? Has the city planning had to adapt to that? Or has there been more red tape, less red tape?
They have adapted, but we're not finished adapting.
That's a good answer.
We've got our form-based codes in place, which I think is all the feedback we're getting is that's been a good thing.
Yeah,
it's been good for development. We try and be, but those things are going to have to be adjusted by the real world market and how we can do that, but we always want to know, we want to ensure quality. We want to ensure to protect everyone's investment, and the feedback, by and large, at least anything that's gotten to me, has really been good. About our form-based codes, and not to say they're perfect, but we'll adjust those as we get better ideas, and we'll depend on developers a lot to help us form that. We've got that in place, and the other big topic now, and it's even in the legislative session. There's this concern about regulation and about red tape and delays, and I get all that. And so we're going to be looking at ways that we can streamline that process as much as possible. You got to have a process, and you got to have those protections in place. Some things you don't have a choice about, fire code and those kinds of things. For sure. But are there ways that we can work with developers to better streamline that process and the inspection process and all that? Now, we're pretty fast with our inspections.
Yeah,
we are. Yeah. And we're really intentional about that. Our building inspection department does a great job, but still, we want to always make it better, because we know, and especially in inflationary times like we've just been through, time really is money.
Yes.
I mean, delays really are money, even more than in a normal economy. But we want to do that. We want to do that on our road projects. We want to do that in every way we can. Yeah. And we're continually looking at that. I tell you, I got to brag on my chief of staff, Colby Fulfer, and Colby's really conscious of that. He also was a small business owner for years, and he he really helps me. We're pretty grounded in that and we constantly remind our departments that we're public servants, and we're really there if there's any way possible to find a way to yes.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna remain conscious of that, and this part about streamlining regulations, and the legislature is going to push for it anyway. Right. There are bills right now to push for that.
Right.
I just hope they understand also the other side of that if you go too far.
Sure.
So property rights are very important, and they are sacred to us as Americans. But your property rights only go as far as until you step on somebody else's.
Yeah,
Right.
Totally.
So we've all it's a balancing act. It always has been, and that's what we're going to be intentional about really trying to work with developers and figure out better ways to help them hit their bottom line.
Right.
For sure.
On that topic, does it really, in your opinion, I'm kind of playing devil's advocate, does it really matter like how if a developer is listening to this podcast right now, how they approach the city? Is it, hey, the city's my enemy, versus, hey, how can I work with the city and get this done? How can we be a team on this and help accomplish a goal? Do you see the difference in that and different outcomes?
I do, because there are developers that are tougher to work with, just like there are cities that are tougher to work with. And I would encourage any developer, and hold us accountable to this same thing, because our staff needs to be doing it the same way. We can't watch everything and we can't regulate everything. There has to be an establishment of some trust that the developer's going to do what the plans say they're going to do, what they've agreed to do, and the city is not going to pile on other. We're not going to come in at the end of the planning process and say, oh, by the way, we need you to do this too.
Yeah.
Or you can go. I've been in planning commission meetings, y'all, and we've got a great planning commission. But I've been in planning commission meetings where a commissioner would start basically designing at the table. With things that aren't necessarily required, but would say something. I've heard this out of their mouth, and this has been years ago, but would say, I'd like this better if you do this. Never mind that what's going on in the developer's head is, well, how many dollar signs is that going through my head now?
Yeah.
And it's just not the best way to treat people and to do that. And let's make it clear what's required. Make sure it makes sense.
Yep.
And then stick to that. But at the same time, on the developer's side, we've got to have that trust that they're, because we can inspect things, but we can't inspect everything.
Yeah.
But the thing, and we won't catch everything.
Yeah.
Do what you're comfortable saying you'll do.
Yeah.
And don't try and do something to cut that's going to significantly change the value or the quality of the project. On the back end. And our part of that commitment is we don't need to be adding things beyond what's required and beyond what the initial agreements were.
So a big level of trust there.
Big level of trust.
Yeah, and it makes sense too. I think it's just interesting. You see with red tape and with all these different buzzwords of if the processes become really difficult, and you have scenarios where interest rate, if a developer has to hold it for a longer period of time and the interest rate environment changes within a year, and you've seen over the past couple of years at least that deals just falling apart because it no longer makes sense, right? Or developers backing out, stuff like that. And I'm sure that's what you want to avoid. Anybody wants to avoid. So I love how y'all are kind of thinking about streamlining there.
Yeah, and we need help. We need feedback.
Yeah.
In fact, and with a new planning director coming in, and it's probably a great time to really open that dialogue, and not that Patsy wasn't open to that, but with change, you've got some built-in new opportunities and new ways of getting input about what we need to do.
Do you see to where if that trust is earned on the first project with a developer, do you see the second project being a lot easier a lot of the times, or is it?
It shouldn't be. It should be the same every time. But we're all human beings,
right?
And we remember things. And I don't think there's you can't take the human element.
You're like, hey, you did what you said you would do.
Yeah, exactly.
Time 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right.
All right.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
I love it. Yeah. So I think the next part we kind of want to roll into is a lot of kind of the key partnerships that have been big for not only downtown Springdale, but of all of Springdale. Blue Crane. The Walton family, Tyson, as you mentioned.
Right.
What do those partnerships look like for y'all, and kind of helping the revitalization?
You've named a couple of them, and Blue Crane continues, or the Runway Group. That all continues with. We just broke ground about 2 weeks ago on Via Emma, which VIA is large, retail and multifamily. Just north of Luther George Park, they're going to overlook the beautiful park, and for our part, we're trying. One of our bond projects is continuing our new streetscape on Emma Avenue to the east, and we're also going to get there are power lines on Park Street that we want to get underground, and that's going to be part of that project, and really clean that up and make that nice. And but those partnerships, we've talked about Tyson. We know about the Waltons, the family, and all their groups that have been so significant. I'm going to tell you, when you have the most important partnership has been with our residents and our voters.
Yeah,
they. I've been through 3 bond issues now in my 16 years as mayor, and each bond issue is a collection of different ballot titles in different categories, and they're all pass fail. They all stand on their own, and of all those ballot titles, probably 15 or 16 in those three bond elections, last one being in 2023. They've all passed by a margin of an average of over 80%.
Wow.
And that says a lot about the trust that your residents place in the ability of the city to be good stewards with that money and to do what they say they're going to do with it. And I won't ever take that for granted either. And at every ribbon cutting that has anything to do with the bond project, at every groundbreaking, I always try and have the presence of mind to remember to thank the citizens of Springdale, the voters of Springdale, for their strong support.
Wow.
The lowest in all those ballot questions was 74-point-something%, and that was our animal shelter, which many people told me would never pass.
74% is pretty good.
Yeah. Same. City Hall was over 80%.
Wow.
And I'll never forget going to people when I was talking about putting the municipal campus on a bond issue question, and we wanted to be downtown. We didn't want to move anywhere else. We knew City Hall needed to be downtown. Our police department needed to be downtown. We had strong beliefs in that, and we needed to help be an anchor down there to keep people down there. And we had a design excellence grant from the Walton Family Foundation. I think it was the first municipal building that was awarded a design excellence grant. We went through that whole process, but that was over $3.5 million of design for that. It was about a $40 million building, which the day we opened it, and we came in right at budget, and the day we opened it, 3-4 years later, it was probably a $75 million building.
Wow.
Crazy.
And so, but we paid $40 for it. I want to make that clear.
That's the one-on-one right there.
Yeah. So, but I can't say enough about the voters. There are a lot of businesses, large and small. For example, Luther George Park. What a bargain for the residents of Springdale in Northwest Arkansas. Wonderful 16-acre park, redesigned with a structure that like nowhere else in the world for a performance venue. And taxpayers have about $2 million in that. The rest was privately raised.
Amazing.
Large donors, small donors. I could certainly name all the donors everybody in Northwest Arkansas would guess, and and they'd be right. But there are significant gifts given to that park from people, from names you would never recognize.
Wow.
Amazing.
People that just believed in their community and wanted to do that. I'm talking about large sums of money, large and small, and they're all important. And but that was, so when we talk about partners, there's a lot of them that aren't the normal names people think of. But just as important.
Yeah, I think it's easy to look at Northwest Arkansas and all the cities and just say, this is all fueled by the Waltons and the Hunts and everybody. But
Buzzwords.
But really, it's especially in Springdale too. It takes the community, and I think that's what we love about exactly what you said. And there's names that nobody would ever know in there that are really behind Springdale and want to continue to see it grow and flourish, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, and sorry, but the Waltons know something very important.
Yeah.
And they understand something. And Tyson does too.
yeah.
That community, that you have to have community buy-in.
Yeah.
They're there to help. They're there to help any way they can. But they want to see that community buy-in too. They want to see, and that's important. And it's important for a project to succeed, that the community have buy-in.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
yeah.
But yeah, so we love that. We want to kind of get a little bit into some of the unannounced projects in Springdale. For what you can.
You're not going to ask me to make announcements, are you?
For at least
I learned a long time ago that I don't need to be making announcements, but I'll talk about what I can.
We can at least ask. Yeah,
okay.
we'd love to just kind of get a little bit more insight on what residents can be excited about. Maybe some things
Maybe
upcoming.
some things that were already announced that might not be out there yet.
Right.
Okay.
Things like that. We'd love to just kind of hear what Springdale's, obviously downtown, but even outside of that.
Sure. Hey, because we've got development going on all over.
Absolutely.
And that's, I don't ever want to, you can, I'll never forget we got our first Chick-fil-A, right? We were the largest, I guarantee you we were the largest city in the country without a Chick-fil-A.
100%.
And because we had Chick-fil-A's all around us, but not in Springdale.
Yeah.
And we got that Chick-fil-A, I think, and it's in the top 10 in the country.
Amazing.
Really?
Yeah,
That's crazy.
And it's if people will give Springdale a chance, we're gonna make you proud. Because Sam's Club when it opened in Springdale and Gene George again, that was able to open there because the residents of Springdale voted in 2012 a bond issue to allow us to build that first section of Gene George Boulevard.
Wow.
So now we have a Arkansas Children's Northwest also because of that.
Big time. Yeah.
So, but when that Sam's Club came, I thought, man, I'm mayor for life if I want to be. That was the biggest thing that had happened since we got at the old Allen Canning building on Springdale, we got the Popeye statue back. I'll never forget how big a deal that was.
Praise God.
That's
Yeah, and it's gone now. But it was but that when Sam's Club opened, and I don't have the recent numbers, but I know 2019 they were the top performing Sam's Club in their whole network.
Amazing.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're busy all the time.
Yeah.
And so
Talk about some foot traffic over there.
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I love what you said, though. I'm going to be using that one a lot. When you give Springdale a chance, we'll make you proud. Yeah.
Right.
I love
And
that.
I promise you that won't be our last Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed.
Hey,
Yeah.
love that.
So I'd like to get a little bit more into downtown too with the multifamily project and that the Waltons I think are a part of, and some of the retail down there. Is the idea for downtown Springdale and Emma Street to become more densely populated and there to become sort of a, if you look at a downtown Fayetteville or a downtown Rogers or even Bentonville or any of those, it seems like when you go there in the evenings, there's always people kind of walking around, sitting around, kind of a nightlife, if you will, of just kind of family spending time. Is that kind of the
Absolutely
good question, right?
And that's I actually I just gave my State of the City address last Tuesday. We're required by statute as mayors to give a State of the City before the end of March each year, and I usually give mine in February. And a year ago, at my State of the City address, I talked about density, and our council has come a long, long way, and I have too. When I became mayor in 09,
09, yeah.
we had a moratorium on multifamily, and there were a lot of reasons for that. I think one of them was that they just didn't have a very good reputation in Springdale. We didn't have minimum design standards for multifamily at the time, and so until the previous administration, there was a moratorium placed on multifamily while they worked on design standards for multifamily, and so we went through a period where the not in my backyard idea really made it difficult to rezone for multifamily for a while because of the the legacy we had in.
So you saw a
parts
lot of
Springdale
pushback
sitting
from
around.
the community on
Yeah,
that.
yeah. If you were putting it near a single family neighborhood, those residents would come out in droves because there was a certain perception about the kind of people who lived in multifamily. Of course, that's changed too.
Yeah.
I mean, now
Nationally,
people
that's
prefer.
changed. Yeah.
I mean, it's our police officers, our firemen, our teachers. Plus so many in the community. The generation that's not my generation. They don't want a 2-acre lot.
Yeah.
With a mansion on it. They want to be able to walk to things. They want to be able to build a community around where they live.
Not have to mow their lawn.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And so that we talked about density. I talked about density, and nothing has changed. I encourage the council to continue. Now there will be times that residents have a good argument, but it's not that my property. The good argument is not, well, you're going to cause my property values to go down, because we know that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's
Right.
going up.
And I think people are starting to get that.
Yeah.
And so it's much easier now, not to say it's a cakewalk, but it's much easier now, and the council and our planning commission is much more open and sees the need to build more density.
Yeah.
And not just multifamily, smaller lot, single family, it's happening. It needs to continue to happen. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Certainly, I think it's what people want now.
Yeah.
But Springdale's, we're a city of over 90,000 people.
Yeah.
And we're pretty spread out. And we've got, not just in our downtown, but in a lot of our established areas around our city, we've got a lot of developable land.
Yeah.
And we don't have to keep pushing out. That's inevitable. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
But that's certainly not the most efficient delivery of services.
Yeah.
Whether you're talking about water and sewer, all other utilities, you're talking about police coverage, fire coverage, we've got a lot of developable land, and it's as expensive as it can be to upgrade a water line or a sewer line, upsize, in an older part of town. As expensive as that is, it's still much more efficient than continuing to push that infrastructure out and spread it out. And so I think everybody gets it. I think we've still got some work to do. In sometimes it's hard to say yes to a multifamily rezoning when you're sitting in a council room or at a planning commission meeting and you've got a room full of angry residents. It's just hard.
Yeah.
And I understand it. I mean, the biggest investment anybody has most always is in their home.
Yeah.
And so I get that, and I'm sympathetic to that. But as long as we can ensure quality and know that they're not going to get hurt by that,
Right.
then we need to continue to push it forward.
Real recapturing of trust. In the last 10
it really
years.
is. Yeah, really is. And they have reason. If they've been in Springdale a long time, back in the 90s and the early 2000s, they've got reason to be concerned. Until they realize but they can see what's being built now.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's nice.
And you just look around at the other cities as well in their downtown areas, and people are wanting to buy houses close to downtown too, and those home prices are going insane because they're able to work down there, they can play down there, they can live down there. Being able to walk to things is, a huge attraction. We bought our home. We don't have a walkable home, but we bought our home because it's as close to everything as possible. Right. And I think that's what people will continue to want, is to be able to live in a community where they can walk down to Casa Alejo and have a meal and hang out at the park down there. So,
how would you contrast the revitalization of downtown Springdale to Rogers? Because I feel like it's on a similar playing field.
I think we're probably maybe a year or two behind.
Yeah.
Where Rogers is.
Yeah.
Well, when we were first really beginning to get serious about downtown redevelopment back in 2010, 2011, Bentonville had already, theirs was 15 years in.
Yeah.
And Rogers was kind of always tracking close to where we were, maybe a little ahead.
Yeah.
And they're probably still there. Rogers has a very different downtown than Springdale.
Yeah.
I do agree that
Yeah.
the feel is a lot the same.
Right.
But they've got more streets. More,
Yeah.
Their downtown has always been
A little bit more spread.
yeah. And even in the old days, because those are old buildings too.
Yeah, they are.
Right?
They are old buildings.
Yeah. So they're a little different. I think that's so neat though. Whether you're talking about Bentonville, Fayetteville, Rogers, Springdale, even the smaller communities around Northwest Arkansas, isn't it neat that you're here, you've got a young family. Maybe you've moved here or grew up here. It doesn't matter. But maybe you moved here and you really don't care what city you live in. You may not even know if it not on your return address,
Right.
Because you see it as a region.
Yeah.
But you can experience things. You can take your wife out or your family every weekend to different downtown in a different area and have a completely all good,
Yes.
but a completely different experience. And I think
100%.
that's really cool.
That's so cool about this
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
And I think my wife can speak for a lot of other wives. She's like, I don't know, I feel like a Bentonville tonight, and then I feel like a downtown Springdale. I'm feeling a little more funky. Let's go to Fayetteville. Like, let's see some college kids. Like, it's a really. We spoke on it before on this podcast. It was like, you have a Dallas, and Austin, a Houston. It's like there's one main hub, and then it's like out, and then here it's like the main vein interstate north and south, and you got like all these different hubs across the totally different feels, and I think it's great. And I mean, really, hats off to you and the leadership around you. I know you probably won't take full credit, but there's been it's been really cool being a local kid growing up here, seeing people, investors calling and like, hey, what about Springdale? And me be like, yeah, I think that's a great spot to look at.
Right.
So really, hats off.
That's so great to hear, and I always appreciate it when people say, boy, I will tell you that it's still my perception that residents in Springdale know less about downtown Springdale than residents around the rest of Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah.
I'll hear it very often when somebody finally comes downtown from another area of the city, and they'll say, "Wow, I didn't know this. What happened? Where's
Springdale?"
Yeah. And so I hear that all the time. But it's fun. But I love hearing that because it's kind of like being I remember going to see. I had an aunt. Most of my aunts and uncles lived in Fort Smith, and my grandparents, and I'd see an aunt and uncle maybe that I'd see maybe just at Christmas time or maybe once a year, and she'd talk about, you've grown, you look so different, and all that kind of stuff. And when you're in that situation where you're not living it every day, it's kind of like that. It's kind of like watching your kids grow up. You don't notice all the change all at once, like somebody who doesn't see them every day.
But you're in the midst of it.
You're right in the middle of it, and so sometimes I need to just step back and say, boy, look at if I could go in my Wayback Machine to 2009 and look at pictures from around Springdale, I would be shocked. At how much has changed.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I think what I'm seeing is you have a real good heartbeat on the community and what the people need, what they want, a real good future planning for the community. So again, hats off to
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of that, where do you think you see Springdale in the next 5-10 years from now?
Well, continued growth. We're planning for it. We'll continue to have. I may not be the mayor because this is my last term, but and I've made that clear. But I know the leadership that could be in place, and I know that they'll continue and improve. They'll have new ideas too. But Springdale will continue to grow. I see downtown continuing to grow. I see the overlay district around the ballpark continuing to. It's really starting to take off. It took some time. It took a lot of time, but I'm excited about that, especially around healthcare. Even with all that Alice Walton's doing in Bentonville, that's going to require. Springdale's we've got a lot of great land out there,
Right.
and we're providing the infrastructure to continue to watch that area grow. I know of some plans out there that are going to be just really huge for Springdale, but also add value and to the quality of life in Northwest Arkansas around healthcare and around certainly education. NWAC someday will expand and have those plans, and so that area is going to continue to grow too. But there will be others. We've got. I talked at the State of the City address. We'll have another interchange someday. We've got room for one more. They have RDOT requires 1 mile intervals.
Yeah.
At a minimum between interchanges, and someday County Line Road is going to have an interchange there.
Wow.
And now we'll start the first phase of County Line Road improvements, hopefully with this bond issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it will be a multi-year. It'll be like Gene George has done. We build some with each bond issue.
Yeah.
But we're going to start around Thompson this year, or maybe not this year, but next. But with this bond issue, this current bond issue.
Right.
And then I am confident that once you build phase 1, phase 2 will continue to the west, and pretty soon we'll have another east-west corridor from Thompson to Highway 112.
That's amazing.
So cool. With an interchange at I-49, I announced at the city council meeting at the State of the City that I would like to name that for Mayor Van Hoos.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they'll support that.
Yeah.
He did a lot of great things in his 10 years as mayor, but the things he'll probably be most remembered for, Arvest Ballpark, but more than that, those 3 east-west corridors.
Yeah.
Don Tyson Parkway, the improvements to Huntsville, and the improvements to Wagon Wheel. And I think if we build another east-west corridor, it would be only right to name it Van Hoos. So County Line, as it's improved, will become Van Hoos.
That's super cool.
Yeah. And so we've got a lot happening. You talk about in the next 10 years. And I talked about the overlay district, but as Don Tyson Parkway is extended to Highway 112, as 112 is improved, which is a state project, there'll be a roundabout at Don Tyson Parkway and 112.
Yep.
There will be. We're currently under design is 64th Street. We've improved it from Highway 412 to Watkins, but the next phase will be from Watkins to the extended Don Tyson Parkway. It will intersect with Don Tyson Parkway.
Yeah.
Apple Road is we've got an agreement with the developers of Teslar, who's building their building on Apple Road. Yeah, and we're going to help them with full improvements on both sides to Apple Road. So we'll continue to build that grid out.
Yeah.
In the overlay district, we're real excited about the overlay district. That had landowner buy-in. The good part, I think the part that made that easier was we had landowners, some very large landowners, but the smaller ones too, who saw the value of creating an overlay district with minimum standards that would ensure quality.
Yeah.
And so that area is going to continue to thrive. But I hope downtown, and I have full confidence that downtown will continue to develop in such a way that we can be conscious of cost of living down there. I hope, of course, the market dictates this more than anything.
Right.
But I hope we can have a downtown where people that work there can afford to live there.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that takes a lot of sacrifice on the part of a lot of people, including the developers, to see the value in maybe pocketing a little less.
Yeah.
And that's hard to ask people to do.
Yeah.
And ultimately it'll be to them. You know, if they're going to build what's allowed to be built down there, and if we drive property values up to thousands of dollars a square foot, so be it. But I hope we can avoid that.
Right.
And we want to encourage avoiding that.
Well, you've gotten the ball rolling in the right direction for sure.
Yeah.
And let me ask you a question as we kind of wind down here. What do you see, or can you speak to, what do you see the next phase of your life looking like? Or are you just
Next phase of my life?
Yeah, next phase of your life after being a mayor. Are you just going to serve in the community, or?
Yes, I'm going to. When I retire, I will. I won't. Our senior center has a motto: "You rest, you rust," and I don't want to rust.
Yeah.
And I feel good. Good. I live 2 miles from downtown, and I walk it often.
That's great.
So, if depending on what my meetings are, if I don't need a vehicle, or if I do need a vehicle the next day for my meetings, sometimes I'll walk home that night and leave my vehicle there at City Hall. So I try and work it out. I've got a bike. I enjoy biking too, but I always prefer to walk if I can.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to stay busy. I'll be the old guy that shows up downtown with walking his German Shepherd.
Yeah.
And but I want to serve somewhere. And I'd love to get paid too for what I do. So I'm not ready to hang it up yet. But but I do think you have a shelf life as a mayor, and I don't want to overstay my welcome.
Yeah.
And there are other things I can do, and I know we've got people waiting in the wings that would do a tremendous job in leadership, and they'll have to get elected. But I think we've got I think we've got a great future, and I'm going to move from coach to cheerleader.
Yeah.
And but I want to serve. I want to be involved. I want to help any way I can.
Yeah.
And I'll probably, honestly, sometimes I ran a small business that can be hard on your body.
Right.
For 35 years.
Yeah.
I ran it for 25. Then I became mayor. Then we were open for another 10 years while my wife ran it. She actually did a lot better with it than I did. So I've asked her never to run for mayor. But but there's a part of me that driving a school bus seems real attractive to me.
Yeah.
And that's not a knock. The part that scares me a little bit is I think kids will be involved.
Yeah.
And or mowing a park, just that kind of stuff.
Just getting out and serving.
Just getting out, that really appeals to me. But I don't know what it'll hold exactly. But I'll stay busy as long as I feel good. I feel great right now, and and we're talking about a few years away. But wow, anything can happen. But I want to stay busy and support whoever's leading the community.
Yeah.
And
the community thanks you for your time and your service in Springdale and continued service. So thank you so much. This was a great episode. One of the more authentic episodes we've had. It was
guys,
just
I love it.
sitting talking. We really appreciate your time. Thank you, Doug.
All right. Thank you.
Appreciate you, Doug.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys.
If you enjoyed the show, make sure to give us a follow on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an update.
Don't forget to connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn for more real estate insights and behind-the-scenes content.
Have a question you want us to cover? Send it our way. And if you're interested in sponsoring the show, visit nwainvesting.com to get in touch. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.